So, hello everyone. Today we are joined in by Vikas Dilavari, a conservation architect based out of Mumbai. He has won lots of awards for his conservation work, but today we are going to talk to him about what is conservation, what prompted him to take up this field, and hear some of his favorite projects that he learned a lot from in life. And this video is part of our expert interviews for the Impresario, the Heritage Foundry, which is part of the Museum Memories project. So, welcome, Vikas. It's
Hi,
wonderful to
thank
have you
you.
on board. And
Thank you, Paul.
how are you doing during the lockdown?
Normal in the abnormal times.
Strange times that we are all in. So, we'll start
Yeah,
with
yeah,
uh,
please.
basic, very simple questions. That what is a conservation architect? When you talk of conservation architecture, what it means, how did
Uh,
it?
conservation conservation architecture is a new discipline which has been introduced. Earlier, the architect was the main person, and I'm talking about 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and he was supposed to be the main master mind behind executing any building or a project. What happened is after the two world wars, when the technology changed, we lost the traditions and the continuity with the of how to build, how things were built in the past, like timber trusses, lime mortar works. All these changed, and we focused into more into RCC and reinforcement concrete buildings. So the present day architects, someone like me who was qualified for 5 years in this thing, we were taught history of architecture. We were taught how to design new buildings, but we were not taught anything which were related to the old buildings and the continuity which was existing earlier. So there was a need to have this discipline because we had lost touch with the original arts and craft, and that's how a conservation architect comes in. He has to have a knowledge of history of architecture. He should have knowledge of the materials which are used in the construction of the older buildings, the heritage buildings. And yes, it does. And he should also have an understanding of sensitivity, basic sensitivity, as the intervention which he is doing, how it blends both materially, aesthetically, and overall in the overall context. So, in a nutshell, since the normal architect is now not exposed to this, this is a specialized discipline which has been introduced. It's been there for the last 30 years. School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi, from where I've graduated, started it. Now you have various other schools like in Ahmedabad, Kamla Raheja in Mumbai, and other places. There is University of York, where a lot of people go to get trained, and now it is an accepted discipline.
So, when you say accepted, what does it mean?
Yeah, well, when we started, we it was not really an accepted one, because what was happening was, we did a lot of activism. There was, there were NGOs who wanted to stop, uh, insensitive development which was happening. More of these were infrastructure projects, and also many a times people wanted to pull down. These are government and semi-government institutions. They wanted to pull down their heritage buildings and design new buildings. So a lot of NGOs like INTAC, Indian Heritage Society, Bombay Environmental Action Group, and others wanted to save these buildings in the city. So they approached us as professionals, and we became the bridge between the two, trying to find a middle path or a solution. So initial, the idea is that uh, in any architectural projects you have to have a client, but when the client is, which is the government or which is the institution, who owns the heritage building, doesn't want you, you can't force yourself upon to them. So someone has to pay your fees, and the person who pays you your fees becomes your client. So the fees used to come through the NGOs and other things. So initially there was first 10 years a lot of activism which went. We were fortunate that Mumbai had its legislation which started, and once the legislation started, there was more acknowledgement and awareness of conservation, and that's how we all started our careers, and now it's an accepted discipline. So that's the word accepted, because initially when I started it was more of conversations, and now it is conservations.
So it's an interesting switch, for somebody coming into the field of conservation architecture in at least in India, they basically have the groundwork prepared for them. So what you're saying is
Always,
that it's a
yeah.
so when you said that the courses started in India 30 years back, so somebody who wants to study conservation architecture has to go to only these few cities to study this course. And basically, now that the groundwork has been prepared by people like you, so it means that they can get a job at the end of it, or do they set up their own business? How does it work?
Yeah. So let me just explain you. What happened is the initial 10 years which we spent during 1990s, there was a lot of activism which was happening. Then from 2000, we started getting projects which were divided projects, like, you did just a facade restoration, you did some historic interiors, or you repaired stained glass and things like that, but as the end of 2000 happened, that first decade, more projects which became holistic, like the Bauda Gilad Museum was one holistic project where the building exteriors, interiors, landscape, the entire revitalization of the museum, cataloging artifacts and everything was done. So it's a pioneer project which Mrs. Tasneem Mehta, he did it. The discipline became more accepted. You had the multinationals who started approaching you to conserve their building, not just the exteriors, but also to help them with the interiors and services. So the scope widened. Similarly, in architecture colleges, the subject was introduced as a conservation discipline, as an elective. So the people were now, the young architects were now exposed to conservation as a discipline. So that was another very positive move. And now there are various institutions in different parts of the country where you have conservation as a master's course. Kamla Raheja has it from 2007. SET has it. As I mentioned to you, School of Planning has it. And so there's more awareness. And yes, when people graduate out, now there are many government projects which are happening. There are individuals, so you can join a firm which specializes in conservation, or you can do your own practice, or you can join up a government department. There are various heritage cells in many of these institutions, which are government, semi-government institutions. So the awareness has spread. Yes, it is a painstaking profession, and it's not so remunerative as when you compare it with interiors and other works, which happens quite quick. This is an academic based kind of a discipline. If you're passionately involved, you'll really enjoy it, and there can be nothing more better than this profession.
So can someone be a conservation architect and work on a modern, like a mall or some
It's
such
like
project
it's
simultaneously?
like you're yeah, it's like you're a doctor. So once you're a doctor, you can always practice your normal thing, and this is a specialization, so nothing stops you. Actually, on the contrary, Bernard Fielden, who is the pioneer of conservation movement, at least in India, he used to always say that you have to know the basic construction, and then you can work out how to understand buildings and other things. Because if you don't have that knowledge, you really don't know how well to execute things. So the basic knowledge of architecture is very essential. So yes, when we get projects, we do new designs also, which are conventional ones, conventional modern designs. But the scale of that is limited. It depends upon if any client approaches you. Like I've done one or two small projects for that, similar like that.
So you mentioned the Dr. Bhaudaji Lal Museum. That's where I met you when I was also working there. And there are lots of do's and don'ts in a heritage structure. and there are grades of heritage structures also. So does your work end when you have completed a project, or what, like, do you give a list of like guidelines for people who are inhabiting the building? So Bhavdaji Lal Museum is a museum. It was, of course, it got the UNESCO Heritage Conservation Award. So it came into people's notice, and people, not just the inhabitants, as in not just us, the museum staff, but even the visitors were very careful. But it's not a building that is lived in. What happens to buildings where people live, heritage buildings? So in terms
Yeah.
of
See,
that.
yeah, in conservation, there are certain philosophy, there are certain principles. Now, if you adopt that principles, these are universal and they are standard. They can change subject to countries with slight cultural variations, but by and large, the idea is to preserve history, to conserve authenticity. We don't want to change things just because it's trendy or it's fashionable. We want to retain it as much as you can. So there are certain fundamental principles which goes in any conservation projects. And while we are executing this, there are so many meetings between the clients and the contractors. So we try to educate them the difference between normal repairs and a conservation repair, which is more of skillful repairs, where this sensitivity is introduced both to the user and to the contractor executing it.
Right.
Often they find that to be weird and this thing in the beginning, but by the time the project comes to an end, they understand it. So that's the education process. I remember working in Rajabai Tower, the stained glass windows way back in late 1990s, where the sweeper used to see us all work there, and sometimes when something went wrong, she was the first person to tell us, "Oh, sir, ye barabar nahi hai. Kaise ho raha hai abhi after 10 years or 15 years." So that's what is more important when the people who are the users, the custodians, come to know what's right and what's wrong. For that matter, like when people paint stone, ideally it should not be painted now, but by now we have enough awareness. But sometimes we do have, episodes of people doing insensitive work.
You mentioned that you like old buildings. You like trying to save old buildings. How crucial is an old building or a heritage building to our existence today? In a country like India, where we need a lot of space, we need open spaces. We also need lots of spaces for people to live in. How does saving an old building
Yeah.
work?
It's a tricky question to answer. Let me try with some analogies. I don't know whether it works. It's exactly like having your grandparents. It's always good to be with your grandparents to learn from them. Yeah, you can't say that space is a constraint, and often, we try to accommodate them, be around with them. Now, according to me, the space and what you mentioned is not really the criteria, because the areas where these buildings are located are in the downtown areas where there's not much population growth. The need for housing, the need for new construction is more, 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers away from the downtown. That's where the influx of people is happening. That's where people who migrate into the city need accommodation. The areas which are historic areas, they don't have that kind of pressures which are there. That's the hype which has been created by the builders. So the question is that if you are located in a heritage building, if you go to Kolkata or if you come to Mumbai, many of these heritage buildings in the downtown or in the historic areas are tenanted properties. Now, unfortunately, we have a Rent Control Act where the properties can't be maintained, so the buildings become dilapidated and they start falling down, and that's where redevelopment comes in. So which is sad. So if the government is really keen and wants affordable housing, we should really tackle conservation, and we should tackle conservation, and we should reintroduce the rental housing. That will solve most of our problems.
What is rental housing?
Rental housing is like now, after 1970s, no longer you stay in a tenanted property. You actually own a flat. So if you are purchasing, if any new building gets constructed, it's a ownership flat which you purchase. Unlike in the past where you used to rent out a space, so that there used to be a landlord and there used to be a tenant, or you may say things were leased out. Like now what is prevalent is lease, but lease is meant for short time, whereas if you have rental housing, that could go for a longer duration and a period. So everyone could afford, like if there's a someone, it's like you want to be in downtown and you don't want large area, so the rental accommodation works most suitable. Well, that's how New York works. The larger bungalows and apartments are in New Jersey, but if you want to be in downtown, these are smaller rental flats which are available. So when you start getting the money back from the tenants, you look after the building. But unfortunately, as I said to you, you have rent control, which restricts the rent, so the buildings don't get looked after well. So that is a serious area which needs attention, because otherwise, no matter whatever you do, you'll be conserving few public buildings, but our residential grain, which constitutes the main heritage, is going to be erased.
So that the next sort of question in connection to that is there any building or any such heritage project in India that you think has addressed these issues correctly and is an example, and something that's from outside India?
Well, I'm talking of India itself. I was fortunate to get a very good clients, which is the Garib Renthan Fund. It's a Parsi trust which owns about 50 properties, and they were keen to repair their buildings and not undergo the redevelopment way. I managed to do at least about a dozen buildings, and three of them have got UNESCO awards, which is the Setna building in Tardev, the Lal Chimney in Agripada, and the Kama building in Bombay Central. So this is a very good example to show where you use like-to-like materials and you follow the conservation philosophy. And the best thing is that the people who are born in these buildings, because they're nearly about 70 to 80 years old, the people who are born with this building have a bonding with this. And they were very happy and comfortable to, see the buildings getting a new lease of life. Now, if you can't solve rent control, you can always work out other incentives of giving extra TDR or something for repairs, which is used, which is fraction of the redevelopment FSI, and it doesn't load the infrastructure. Otherwise, if you have a building which undergoes redevelopment, you're going to have car park, you're going to have stilts, so you lose the connection with the ground. Whereas here, if you go, you still find neighbors on the veranda sitting, talking together, and kids still playing crickets in the open spaces, something which is going to disappear. And all the terraces are going to, all the open spaces are now going to be on terraces, which is what the new generation is going to be be living with.
Yeah, and most high rises, one is not allowed to even go up to the terrace. There are no balconies, and it's a complete.
So what's happening is in the pretext of solving the quantity issue, we are losing the quality issue, the quality of life. Now, that's a very important and a crucial one. The tenants, unfortunately, do not understand, because they want just they want an ownership. So for them, it's like sitting in a cramped flight, with less leg space. They're happy with that, this thing. But imagine if you had good quality of life, if you had a better space, that's something which helps, it's for a healthy living.
It's probably one of the pros, if one might use that word, of the lockdown is now we are reanalyzing our spaces, right? We suddenly realize, all, especially people living in the metros in India, that how we were spending so much time outside our homes. That's why we never gave importance to all the things that you mentioned. We never realized the importance of community. We were always trying to avoid our neighbors as much as possible. We didn't develop bonds. We didn't realize that we needed some green space somewhere we were ready to compromise, for spaces that actually made no sense. I mean, during the lockdown, none of these high rises, we could go even to the swimming pool or the gym. And that's what, like you mentioned earlier, that's what the builders stress upon, quality of life. They're cutting down trees and then they're making these complexes with some five pretty looking trees in the name of landscaping, which actually are not helping us in, they don't talk about organic sustainable livelihoods at all in any way. So do you think, or do you hope that the pandemic is going to teach something to no, not much.
Well, we had major issues in 1920s when you had a similar episode, and there were city improvement trusts guidelines and schemes which were worked, which helped in improving the quality of life. If you really see the contributions of the city improvement trust, but after a while, all disappears, and the sad part is that now our development plans and our basic planning is more greed based rather than need based. So when you have a greed based factor coming in, we that's directly proportional to the quality of life. So when you have need based, these are where the cities can last long and they can live long. And this is how Mumbai was one of the finest examples, of the late 19th century, one of the finest city east of Suez. But that was need based. And now things have changed. And until unless we have a serious awakening and consideration of environment, I don't think this will work.
Especially with the coastal road coming up, where the Koliwadas will now be uprooted.
Yeah,
I mean,
just one second. Yeah, sorry.
So with the coastal road coming in and the Koliwadas all along the coastal road disappearing, it's not, all the things that you mentioned till now will actually have no relevance, right? Community living, open spaces, ownership, all that goes away.
See, development has to happen, but it has to be sensitive development, and those who can do sensitive development or those who can understand sensitive development, will benefit in the long run. Now, what happens is often we are very short of time, and I think people don't want to do a lot in quicker time, and the need of the hour is also there. But I think, if you have good debates and if you have informed, sensitive development, there are ways to work out everything. So we hope that becomes a trend for all future projects, and you have something positive for the youngsters,
right.
Next generation.
Right. So which was the trigger point in your life? What made you take up architecture? Why conservation architecture?
Well, architecture, because I was very bad and I wanted to be a doctor and I could never become one. I got less person. But I landed up being doctor of old buildings, which is not bad. My maths was weak, so you joined architecture because there was no mathematics in architecture at that time when I was graduating. And then I got interested in conservation because I was working with an architect, Ved Sagan, who was handling Gaiety Theatre, which was the first project of conservation in the country at Simla. And interestingly, that got me motivated. And while you were in your third year or fourth year of architecture, you were given a project of redesigning Crawford Market. And very interestingly, all my classmates who broke the market, who designed a fancy market, got more marks. So that tempted me to really do my master's to understand whether I was really wrong in conserving the Crawford Market, which I had done in my academic exercise. So I did my first master's in School of Planning at that time, which was just established. We were the second batch of 5 students. And thereafter I started practicing, but again, you never got breaks. You were more into NGOs and activism, and that couldn't sustain you longer. So you started teaching, you worked part-time. So you've done all the necessary things which one does while during the struggling time, but you still had a focus. I remember that when I made my visiting card, which I haven't changed since I made one, I cleanly wrote conservation architect, nothing else. No architect, no interior designer, nothing, because I needed to focus myself on this. And with God's grace, you got the right projects at the right time. I was not. Now there is a mad rat race trying to get projects, but we were fortunate that since being the earlier people in the field, you got the right opportunities and right things to do. And I'm very happy that I got some excellent clients, corporates like Tata Sons, NGOs, many Parsi clients who really care for their heritage. And that's how my practice started. And I've been lucky with that. I don't aim and aspire to do many things and to become very big. It's happy to do what you do with small things and to do it well. That's the that's the philosophy.
Small things, right? Because how many UNESCO conservation awards have your buildings got
See,
till now?
what
That's
is an
definitely
average
a
of
lot
an
of good work.
award is an average of an average to determine an average. So don't go by these awards.
No, it means a lot.
Just
It means
because
a lot to a lot of people, especially young people. They get a lot of inspiration because an award of that stature and scale does mean that there is recognition for heritage somewhere.
frankly
You,
speaking, if the user of the building is happy and if the neighborhood is happy to see that building restored and they look after it, that's the biggest award which anyone can get, rather than the physical awards which you get and which you display it on your tables or on your
wall.
glass shelves or wall or whatever it is.
So that is something very important that Vikas said that we should all think of is ultimately what is the project about? Is it about winning an award and getting more money, or is it about the essence, the original meaning of the project? So, which is the project that you're really proud of? That made you happy in terms of
Hey, Frank, what is happening is this lockdown gave me a chance to see all my projects in last 30 years. And
right?
every project is unique because in every phase of life, like while you're struggling, the first project which gave you a break was an American Express Bank who was doing interiors, and I got an opportunity to conserve the architectural details which were otherwise hidden, and especially when you have a multinational corporate where their identity is more important. But I was fortunate to have a good CEO who gave me a free hand, John Roski, and we did some wonderful examples. So that was an interesting project at that time. Then when we worked on the stained glass of Rajabai Tower with the British experts coming in, you were happy setting high benchmarks. The Corporation Hall of BMC is where you discovered the lost art of gilding, and once you did that interiors, it was very opulent and people appreciated it. Yeah, and then came Baudaji Lad Museum, which was another good project because it was a holistic project, which is a success story of a good public-private partnership and the efforts of so many people. People, the city started appreciating it. So that was a point to prove that conservation works and it is economically beneficial too. Then, while restoring the Archiepiscopal Palace in Old Goa, which was structurally very challenging, that gave us satisfaction to see and save that you could save something which is 300, 400 years old. And somewhere around the last decade, you worked on these so-called unloved buildings of Mumbai, the chawls kind of things, as I said to you, of the,
Right,
not the
right,
chawl,
right.
simple middle class residential accommodation, which are so wonderfully designed, climately conscious, with using best materials that if you just conserve them, Mumbai can be a very beautiful city. And off late, the last 5 years, I've been dabbling with fountains, and restoring them gives an immense joy because the city appreciates it, and we have all these in front of us, but it was never working, it was never functioning. So to see and put it right, and you hope and pray that it's maintained well. So every project has its own separate what do you say, role in their in one's career and at that particular duration.
What you said is very correct. I remember I've passed by Flora so many times, the Flora fountain, and I thought, oh, it's nice. I always saw it as a structure. It's only after the restoration last year when it was functioning as a fountain and you could approach it, and I know that space to sit and stand, and different times of the day it looked different, and that's when I realized that, oh, this means more, because I am not from Mumbai. I was pretty much an outsider, though I've lived there for nearly 13 years. But still, it becomes has a very different context even to somebody who has grown up with something like that in the city. So I belong to Jaipur, and Rajasthan has a lot of these old stone forts and palaces, and which thankfully a lot of them have been restored pretty well. And I know a lot of people, find a lot of pride and joy without realizing the hard work that's gone into it. And people who've been part of these projects have always said the same thing, that as long as it's used and people are happy is what matters, as long as the people for whom these projects were. And sadly, in a lot of semi-rural or smaller towns and cities of India, we see that this kind of an ideology hasn't percolated down. They all look the same, and I travel a lot. You also travel a lot. You would have seen they somehow look the same. The plastic, the glass, and that aluminium. Those kind of buildings have come in. They all somehow have the same red and blue colors. I don't know why somebody was giving those colors at a discount or something. Like, I know when you were talking about Kolkata, I know these buildings in Kolkata which are very prominently shown in a Satyajit Ray or Manal Sen or Tapan Sinha film. They have a word associated with them called Shatshate. Bangla Shatshate actually means damp. So the moment you think of an old building, that's what comes to you. There's going to be damp, there's going to be moss, and if it's a heritage like a fort or something, then it's going to be the smell of bats. Now I'm happy with it, but for people who live in such buildings, it's quite a difficult time, and a lot of them want to save such buildings. Their family, sort of heirloom kind of a thing, but they're unable to do it. So could you just tell us some like some 5 or 6 points that we can do to just take care of the buildings that we are living in?
Yeah, well, the most important thing is to put it into use, because if it's not in use, that's where the neglect will start in, and you have to have it in use. That's the reason why Diwali Safai or lime washing used to happen, so that you could check the nooks and corners and see whether there are termites or not termites. Structurally it's all sound or not. So
Right.
having periodic maintenance is a very important fundamental. If you see a small sapling growing, it's best to uproot it then, rather than to wait it to become a large tree and then spend a lot of money repairing it and getting it out. Second is to take pride and understanding the awareness and the history of the building, because everything has played an important role in the social history of the city. If you can understand, sometimes you stay in a neighborhood which has given a kind of a social character to that entire area, which is very essential. And sometimes you you come across buildings which have associational value. So if you respect that, these buildings are living pages of a book, and they should be retained. The third is that always do the skillful repairs with help of professional advice, rather than going to quacks, contractors directly, and who will give you all recommendations, and they'll recommend you the latest products, which are like painting or treating a stone with anti-repellent, water repellent chemicals and things like that. Do not experiment with historic buildings. And lastly is that give it tender care and love, and you'll see that how beautiful our city is.
So if it has moss, should we try cleaning it or removing it?
Well, moss should not be there in the first place. The idea is that where is the water coming in? So if you do regular maintenance, if your drains are clean, if the gutters are clean, the water will never come in. And that's what I mentioned. If you do every year a lime wash, or if you paint your house regularly, you're looking into it's like how you service your air conditioners. So the same way. So you have to look into it. The question is that we all have that, it's like a rent control phenomena where, you anticipate that the landlord will do things. So even the bulb is not changed, but you have, fancy cars which are worth lakhs of rupees, but if you see the houses and other things, the setup is just the same. So we need to change that whole thing. It's this just to create a positive environment, and if you look after things well, you set the trend for the next door neighbor to do it. That Swachh concept was a real brilliant one. That was the first step towards cleanliness, and then comes good maintenance, and then comes skillful repairs. If you follow these three things, half your work is done.
Keep that in mind. And so, what do you look forward to post? Hopefully, the lockdown ends
As a
pretty soon.
conservationist, you look backwards. You're looking forward to conserving more of old and past, because every time someone says what's new, I said it's all old and I'm restoring the old. So yeah, with some projects, I hope yeah, the trend of conservation, spreads. It doesn't fade away as fashion, because while we were students, low cost housing was very trendy. But 20 years down the line, no one is talking low cost housing. So, and of course, conservation is seeing a lot of changes in our Indian context, where, copying, imitating, reconstructing, uh, all goes under the name of restoration, beautification. So hope that doesn't happen, and we can set good benchmarks, which always will help the others to get inspired, and that's how the baton or the torch will keep passing to the younger generation.
So, the last question before we end this is, can you give us the names of 4 or 5 buildings that we should, once the lockdown ends and we start traveling,
Oh,
look
sure.
at anywhere in India or outside India, whatever?
I'll talk more of Mumbai, since this thing. I'm sure any building which you see, any historic building, if you see with a fresh eye and with an open eye to understand and appreciate, you'll see a lot of difference. I just recently worked on a building which is called Mahajiani Dargah, which is opposite Haji Ali. And yes, I used to see it from a distance while we were passing, going to town and other things. But when you got a chance to work upon it, you just realize that it's one of the most tranquil sites in the city, which is hardly visited by anything. So it's important from a sacred pilgrimage point of view, but it's also important as an interesting architectural example of the city. And it's the right time to see it before the coastal road comes in and all the setting of all these monument changes, which was connected with the sea. That's one. There are many ordinary residential buildings, which some of which we've restored. And if you restore it well, they give a separate charm. So one should go and see many of these historic areas, Kota Chiwadi, Matar Pakadi, or for that matter, many Parsi colonies and bags, Kharegat colony, and so many other things. These are things which are seen, but we have just ignored it. Yeah, then as I said to you, I've worked on the fountains, and something which interests me is the Mulji Jetha fountain and the Wadia clock tower. What was very touching and sentimental was that there used to be a coconut vendor just opposite Wadia clock tower, and we used to keep having coconut whenever we used to go to the site. But the day of inauguration, when everything was done, my whole team of 6 people, we had a coconut, and we gave him some money. He refused to take the money. And he said, "Sir, आपने इतना कुछ किया है, ये हमारी तरफ से आपके लिए है. I will not charge you for this."
Wow.
So that's the best award.
That's
which
the
one?
best award. Right. So we hope to see you soon again. And
Pleasure.
we hope to go on one of these sites or some of these sites in Mumbai when the lockdown ends. So we would like
Definitely.
you to take us around. And thank you so much for giving us your time. And
My pleasure.
we'll catch you again. Best of luck,
Thank you
Vikas.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.